Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm Andrew. I'm Kate. Were you trying?
We're so similar women.
I'm used to it going, I'm Andrew, I'm Caitlin, and I'm Kevin.
Oh, no.
Okay, sorry.
You were on the script. It's strange.
Have they always had enter and return written on the key, on that key?
I don't know.
Or is it just like a special needs Mac?
It's not a special needs Mac.
That was the only accommodation they made.
I know they make those.
You're on your own.
But in case you don't know the difference between enter and return, you're covered. Okay,
We're going to be very good.
Ready?
I'm ready.
Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm Andrew.
I'm Kevin.
And I'm Caitlin.
And we're here to discuss some more articles from the green page at cmuptm.blogspot.com. How many times can you say that fast? And the first one, I guess, Paris is calling a halt to, Paris the city in France, is
Not
calling
Paris,
a halt to outdoor filming of action scenes in response to the Charlie Hebdo shootings of last month.
So this article was in the New York Times. It's by Aurélien Breeden. And so yeah, these new restrictions on filming movies or TV shows in Paris are, as Andrew just said, a response to the Charlie Hebdo attacks in January that left 17 people dead. This legislation bans the use of fake weaponry, pyrotechnic effects, or actors in police and military uniforms. And the idea is that this ban was introduced by Police Commander Sylvie Barneau in order to, in the event of another terror attack in Paris, to avoid either confusing bystanders or causing terrorists to attack actors dressed as police people or military people in the military. Personnel, thank you, that's the word.
And interestingly, in this article, I mean, this was sort of my first reaction was like, this seems like a good idea, like probably a common sense sort of thing. And those seemed to be kind of the consensus as I wrote on. In the end, one of their policemen.
It's the commander.
Oh, Commander Barneau, yeah.
It's the woman who introduced the legislation.
Said that, well, this is a guy though. He says there's no impact on current productions because we're in a very calm period. Must have been one of the films. Oh, Olivier René Venon, who heads a regional agency that promotes filming and assists crews in and around Paris.
Right.
So he sounds like kind of a liaison. He said there's no impact on current productions because we are in a very calm period, adding that complex action shots were often filmed on private grounds anyway, and then, quote, it's perfectly manageable. So I think that sounds great. It's like, yeah, you do it in more private places where people won't be. I mean, at the same time, I think it seems like common sense, and then I'm also like, what are the actual chances of something like that happening again in Paris? I mean, maybe it's very likely.
Maybe they have reason to believe that there's like another attack that's imminent, but it seems like not something that they could continue to enforce for a long period of time because there are so many film shoots in Paris. Like last year in Paris, there were 930 film shoots. 20 of those shoots were part of foreign productions, and
that means there was 910 French shoots. Does that mean like? So that I wonder what that means. Like, is that a scene? Like 920 scenes were shot? Because were there 910 French movies made all last year? Like that sounds like a lot.
Sounds like a lot. I don't know, or if it includes small ones. But
I'm sure it includes like smaller
like
short films,
independent
films.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
probably. This did remind me though a lot of the theater. That was probably like 80%. It reminded me kind of the theater of the TSA though after like the 9/11 attacks, where it's like it's not really so much about catching terrorists because we haven't through to the TSA. It's about making it look like we are taking measures to be safer. I mean, even if those are real measures, it's about me, a passenger who's not a terrorist, walking through and feeling like things have changed for me.
Yeah.
Well, what's funny is like this isn't about introducing like sort of the optics of security that are about making people feel safer. It's about removing something.
Well, I think there's another level to this that they don't really mention in the article, probably, which is just that Paris, as a culture, probably feels a little terrorized anyway right now, and maybe part of this is just saying like, hey, we just don't want to put people through the like fear that they might that might ensue or whatever might ensue if they were to see something like that right now. Like this just it seems at least like just the nice thing to do.
Yeah. That totally makes
so
sense.
I don't know if that's part of it because it doesn't say that, but it seems logical to me that then they would say, oh, it is for these safety reasons. I'm not sure.
Yeah, sure. But it seems like it won't be super impactful either. I mean, in terms of film production, so why not?
Yeah.
Why not? That seems fine.
So our next article is from HowlRound, which is a favorite of the Green Page and of all of us here. HowlRound, of course, is it's associated with isn't it associated with theater, whatever that is, TCG? Is that right?
I'm not sure, but I bet.
Maybe not. Maybe they just talk about it all the time. Anyway, it's a great blog about all things theater that if you haven't checked out, you should. And this article is by a man named David, I can't read my own handwriting, Copeland. And it's called The Privilege of Privilege, and it's sort of his musings about being a white male in a white male-dominated society and coming to terms and understanding of his own privilege, I guess, recently, it sounded like, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, it was weird that he really dug into it now as like a 70-year-old person.
Older man.
Oh my gosh!
What have I been doing all this time?
I had no idea.
But he's a playwright, a produced playwright. I guess I've never heard of him, but I have heard of many playwrights. So that's not surprising. Yeah, so reading would help. And I don't know, what was your all's take on this? I mean, obviously, people should be self-aware, especially people in positions of power. It's your responsibility to understand how and to what extent your privilege and power exists.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, you seem to be, in my opinion, moving through the world as an ignorant fool, right? So.
Yeah, and not self-reflective or self-aware. Which is crazy.
And I didn't buy that he hasn't thought about it before. I think it's just now he's writing about, blogging about it.
Maybe
So
it's also that this
narrative.
language is sort of relatively new. I've read in the last couple of years a lot of pieces about privilege and particularly in male-dominated industries like theater. And but I haven't, I don't think, read many or maybe any pieces about privilege where the author was a white man.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually a woman or a racial minority writing about how white straight men should be aware of their privilege. But I guess it was, I appreciated that a straight white, presumably straight, I'm not sure, but a straight white man was I'm realizing to what extent I benefit from my identity just implicitly every day in the world. So that's a good thing.
I mean, he also did a good job of laying out his own sort of conflict about it, because of course, as a white male, he writes plays from his perspective,
right.
Which there are way too many of in the theater. Was his point as well. There's too many people like me speaking in the theater, but
he still wants his voice to be heard.
Exactly,
right.
I still want to have my plays produced. So there's this little bit of a seppuku going on there. Seppuku?
Oh, right.
Now I get it.
I
get it now.
Can you see my second, Kevin?
Yeah.
You know what that means?
No.
You're gonna cut my head off. The pain gets to be too much.
Oh, yeah. Sure. I would be happy to do that for you.
One thing I did think was kind of interesting and maybe a little bit telling was at the end he's quoting the former artistic director and current artistic director of Oregon Shakespeare Festival, which is an organization I actually love, and they are working a lot to be just a more inclusive organization in general in terms of telling stories and who they employ. They work to get ethnic and racial minorities, women, female playwrights.
Lady playwrights?
I didn't even know that women could write until I've just never seen it happen, but I guess it does.
What's next?
And then like Eastern storytelling, they have people who do like ASL on stage, so like they're a dope organization. But it was interesting that they, two people I think are really cool, when they're talking about how they may have benefited from privilege, they do talk about it. Libby Apple is he says, a white middle-class Jewish woman, and she says, when she's talking about how privilege has affected her, she's like, well, it has been hard as a woman, which she's right, I mean, I get it, but it was like, wait, you're distancing yourself from this. And then when they go to Bill Rauch, who's a white male middle-class Harvard graduate, he says, well, but I'm gay, which is also significant, but I was like, well, you're like, kind of like, oh, but not me, but it's like, well, it is you, I mean, because it's me, you know what I mean? It's like, it's me, I'm a woman, so it's like, I have that part, but I'm also white.
Yeah,
And
I've got no excuses. It's all me. I'm a bad guy.
You were a very bad man.
And I think that I grew up in a pretty pretty white bread suburban like East Coast upbringing, and then I moved to first Texas to Austin, and then to California, where I was introduced in lots of ways, especially working closely with a lot of people from a lot of different cultures, like that.
Yeah.
I had to learn quick, and it was a big. I mean, I had to learn quick, like how my background affected the way that I could interact with people of color, with people who come from, lower socioeconomic status, whatever. Like, grew up differently than I did, and like, duh, right? Like, isn't that just sort of being human and coming to terms with everything that went into making you who you are is sort of your job from day one, in my opinion. So
but I appreciate the fact, like, the more that we talk about the ways that this privilege is just ingrained in our social structures and is systemic, I think the better.
Theater. We should talk about theater specifically. Like, why? This is a playwright, somebody who's bringing his voice, and whose voice we put on stage all the time, over and over and over again, like we care anymore.
Totally.
So that's the thing that, to me, as a practitioner, that's the thing that needs to change most.
Yeah, I mean, and there are implications even beyond the stories, which are so important. It's like practical implications of like who gets cast. Mm-hmm. If I'm telling a story about a bunch of white men, then we're gonna hire a bunch of white men. So it's like, how does that, he does make that point about he's not for, I forget what his wording is exactly, but it's like, he's not for historical theater or something like that, where he's like, I'm not in favor of preserving history if that means that we're not moving forward in terms of telling new stories. So like, which I think is important. I mean, if we are only doing works from our Western theatrical past, that means that we're excluding a lot of people unless we radically change the way that we tell them. So I thought that point, I mean, it's not a new point, but I was like, go ahead and make that, because I think he's right. It's something to think about.
Totally. One last thing I'll say on this before we move on. I will also point out that the majority of ticket buying the majority of decisions for money spent on Broadway come from a demographic that is 40-year-old women. That is the number one demographic for people who make decisions to buy Broadway tickets. So I don't know if that means that that's that's a sort of proof of white privilege or what, but
Well, I think if that's your audience and those are the people that you have to cater to, then maybe, I don't know how open-minded, white middle-aged women who go to Broadway shows are.
Yeah.
I imagine maybe they're looking for something.
Yeah. Well,
I just can't imagine that they're looking for something super queer, super boundary pushing in their Broadway consumption. So if you have to appeal to that market, then you have to limit the range of material that you're putting in your shows.
But is that cyclical?
That's what I'm saying. Is that what we've created this needy class, not needy, but we've created the market by pushing this white privileged male story driven crap. Right. And now how do you work back from that, especially in profit making theater, for profit theater? But who knows? I don't think we should. I think we've done this.
Yeah.
We've said everything there's to say about
Unless you're sorry.
Well,
You think you're
one tiny thing. I was just thinking about I wonder about that statistic about the women making these purchasing decisions, only because I know in my personal experience that my mother is often the one who buys tickets on behalf of her and my father.
right.
So is it like, is it a discussion where she is making the purchase, or is it really like that's the major demographic actually watching it? You know what I mean? Or is it
That's a good question.
But whatever. I mean, you're still right. Let's move on to our very last article.
Last article.
Last one.
Before spring break.
Before spring break. It's gonna be good.
This one's called Making Talent, 4 Lessons from the Front Lines of Digital Education, and it's from fastcocreate.com. And
Fast Company is the do you know that magazine? Fast Company?
Fast Company. Yeah. You talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
Andrew loves it.
Well, the website is fastcocreate.com, and the author is Allison Kent Smith.
Yeah, she's very good.
So she has 4 lessons.
Yeah, I had a trouble understanding
God, I know.
what this article was really trying to say.
Yeah.
Too.
Basically talking about digital literacy in the workforce, and Fast Company's a business-oriented magazine, especially for small businesses and entrepreneurial businesses. That's kind of their market niche.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what they're trying to say is like, hey, you should try to figure out what your digital literacy is, whatever that means, which was the problem. Like, I don't really know what she meant by that.
Yeah.
In your company, and do these 4 things to try to stay abreast of being, a good company because you have digitally literate staff.
Right.
I don't know,
Well, one of them was lesson 1, pretend is not progress, basically just meaning that if you think that you know everything you need to know about digital technologies and how they work in the workplace, then you probably don't know anything. So I think it was Aristotle that said, a wise man knows he knows nothing, or something like that.
It was Aristotle who said, if you don't know how to use the internet, you're never going to get anywhere in business.
That's so true.
probably also said that.
That was the second thing he said.
Yeah.
But I think you're right, it is kind of like, I think I know all I need to know. It's like, well, digital.
Well, but
technologies change all the time.
how would you possibly? Like, that's the thing too.
Yeah.
Everything is so, mind-blowingly fast in the way it's changing, and what's relevant last year is not what's relevant this year in terms of, and again, like, what are they talking about? Are we talking about software?
Yeah.
Are we talking about databases? Are we talking about computer hardware?
Yeah, it's weird because she seems to have a very specific thing in mind that she never actually specifies, because she says in the opening paragraph that a multi-million-dollar global client admitted that he walks into work naked every single day. In other words, his skills have not evolved to meet the digital specific demands of the job, blah, 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 and that it costs the company hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost opportunities. So it's like,
What are you talking
So
about?
vague.
based on what?
Like, he doesn't
So
know how to use Hootsuite. Like, what's going on?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
What is the thing that he's missing? And the other thing is, like, it depends on what type of job you have. No amount of digital anything is going to make you a good manager. For instance,
Right.
like no amount of Excel. It's nice to be able to fill out payroll on Excel or whatever. But if you're managing a team and trying to bring people together in order to complete a project on time or whatever, which is the job of a project manager.
Right.
Software.
It's also no amount of great software or digital tools is going to make up for either bad management or bad workers.
Yeah.
It's
or bad ideas or
right.
no ideas.
When I saw the title of this article before I read it, I thought that maybe when they're talking about digital education, I thought that maybe they were talking about something like Blackboard, which has all these tools that are great ideas in theory, but in practice I've never seen them work well. Like the discussion board feature on Blackboard, where it's supposed to foster great discussion. It's it never does.
No one
Right.
discusses.
And it's a great idea, but if you can't figure out how to make that tool work for your material or your students,
Right.
then what's the point?
Well, that was rule number 3. Application is essential. Saying that general education in digital literacy isn't really the point, that you have to know what types of digital tools are going to make your company work better, and to focus on those and their specific application to what each person specifically does.
Yeah, I mean, I did like the implication in this article that it's a good idea to invest in the workforce that you have now instead of expecting to just find them out in the world. And
That's true.
You know, that's like, maybe like I have somebody who's really talented but isn't necessarily up to speed completely on Photoshop or whatever. It's like, let's bring those skills here. I'm investing in you. I want you to stay and I want you to get better.
I strongly disagree. I think you should just fire that person.
You should know what you're doing.
No, I mean, that is a really good point. I hadn't really thought of it that way. As an older person too, like about to re-enter the workforce after like spending 3 years, sort of one of the main things I've done here is increase my digital literacy a whole lot. Like, I've learned a whole new suite of drafting software. I've learned Excel in a way that I never thought was possible. It is magic, by the way. But now it's funny because now I'm looking around at jobs, and actually, you know, very few of them specifically say anything about what I know how to do, and plenty of them are like, yeah, and if you know MATLAB, that's great too, right? Like, actual specific things that I don't know. So, I don't know. I think personally, I'm screwed. I think the whole.
You still got 8 weeks.
Right. I'm gonna currently. I think personally, the whole reliance on all this digital stuff, and you know, I'm a self-avowed troglodyte, so of course I would say this, but I think that, you know, we don't need it as much as we think we do. But at the same time, you know, it's a reality, so we all have to bone up. It's a bone up. Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
He's all boned up.
But he's wearing a white shirt today. I believe this color is bone, actually.
You've probably never seen me wear this color on the podcast before.
Just like the business card from American Psycho. I think that's it for this week. I think we've really done everything we need to do.
I think we've beaten that.
Thank you so much for sticking with that. That was a long session. We really do appreciate you sticking around, as I know that you have. And we'll see you next week. We're going to do another session over spring break, and we're going to do it.
That's how dedicated we are to you.
With cocktails, I assume, and
I'm going to be wasted.
Umbrellas and hats and sunglasses.
So
we'll see you next week for the spring break edition of the CMU PTM Blogspot.com podcast. I'm Andrew signing off.
I'm Kevin.
And I'm Caitlin.
Have a great spring break, everybody. Later.